thought I'd try something a little bit different for me, and what I'm going to do is try and build this. Now, I left my sort of Lego years before Bionicle became a thing, but I have been aware of it for a long time because I think it's largely credited with rescuing Lego at a time when Lego was really struggling to have traction. But it's always interested me because it doesn't really look much like Lego. I think I was very much a sort of Lego system kind of builder. You know, the sort of solid bricks, solid plates, and you know, in my time building Lego, that was kind of all you really had available to you. But this, of course, is this strange sort of mix of Technic and then more sort of moulded parts, and I'm actually really interested just to get into it. I picked this up in a second-hand sort of antique toy shop in Matlock in the United Kingdom. They had a few available, and I just sort of grabbed one out of interest because I thought it would be an interesting thing to make live on a video, which I've never really done before. So feel free to critique my building technique as I have a look at this now. I'm assuming this is complete. You know, I just bought it. I bought it sight unseen, so to speak. I haven't unscrewed it until this point, and even the actual sort of mode of delivery of it is quite unusual. Because I don't know if any other Lego has ever been delivered in a sort of cylindrical plastic container. So it's a pretty sort of standard kind of looking instruction sheet. I won't show you every page. I'll just try and kind of crack on. And I think the world was called, what was it Matanui? Sorry, I should say this guy is actually Toa Nuju, I think. I may be pronouncing that wrong. And I believe they sort of start off as these smaller characters, but then they kind of develop over time. So I'm just going to do a little bit of separation here and just see what sort of pieces I've got. I apologise. I'm sure this is going to go in and out of focus as I work on this, but as I say, I've never really tried to do Lego on camera before in quite this fashion. So do bear with me. I'm just trying to get a rough idea of what I've got. I mean, I do find these ball joints really interesting. I once tried to do a mecha on Lego Ideas. Those of you familiar with me and my sites who may recall Die X, which was actually a grouping of several small fighters who came together to form a mecha on the show Starfleet. And it crashed and burned spectacularly on Ideas. And in fact, I've seen very, very few humanoid figures do well. Iron Giant might be an exception, actually, to that rule. But generally speaking, figures don't seem to do very well. I don't quite know why people don't like it. I mean, Ninjago is a good example. Ninjago had a lot of really nice mech models in it as part of its sort of overall line. But for some reason, despite that, and I don't know how well they sold, but despite that, you don't tend to see them making any sort of headway on Lego Ideas. They do Voltron. Voltron came out as a Lego idea, of course, which is a very, very sort of famous mecha in America. But I think that was, you know, really down to its kind of star status in terms of childhood memories and so on. So that didn't come as a particular surprise to me. But everything else just seems to fail. But the reason I'm talking about that, as I say, is that for Die X, the ball joints of, you know, this sort of nature were really, really useful because they give you a lot of flexibility in terms of range of movement. So I think it looks reasonably complete. So let's have a look. That's one piece, isn't it? What piece is that? I'll laugh if I fall at the first hurdle with this. I can't immediately spot the piece I'm supposed to start with. Oh, it is actually this piece. Okay. Okay. I've got it. Okay, I'm away now. Okay. Okay. And I think this is actually quite. It's not actually the way in which a Lego instruction manual would normally operate, because if you can see here, it's not actually showing me which pieces I need, and so I'm going purely by the graphic in terms of what it's expecting me to put where, which is different. So I'm going to have my wits about me here, because it's obviously not going to guide me overly much. In fairness, it may not be so complicated that I need a lot of help, he says. Famous last words. Where's that going to go? Oh, okay, I see. Oh, I see, okay. Yeah, okay, got it. So it looks like this is going to be the hips, probably. And we want... yeah, we want to leave 2 at the bottom there. Okay, there's that. And there's that. So these are obviously these Technic pieces that they were utilising to good effect there. Just to... oh, actually, I'll tell a lie. They are now showing me the pieces. In fact, it's saying... oh no, they're just telling me how long the pieces are supposed to be. I don't think there's much of an option there, to be honest. Okay. I do so hope I've actually got enough pieces to do this with. I don't really fancy going raiding for spares. I can avoid it. One of those in the middle, apparently. But that is... it's a very, very small piece. Okay. Well, fair dues. The length hint was actually very good there, because I had other black ones available to me. But it is actually that one that I need to use at that particular point, it would seem. Although even that seems quite long. But I think that's the right one. And now I am... well, that is super confusing. How strange. So it wants me to put 2 cogs, but just place them in there. Okay, that is so non-Lego. They're literally just these 2 here. They're just balancing there, which is weird. But there is no instruction to connect them to anything. So I guess those are going to be used as some sort of hinge, sort of an interconnecting piece. So now I need to... I'm not using that yet, apparently. Should be a... yes, this one. Is that it? Yeah, that must be it. And that's going to slot on there to pin those into place. Right, so now we've got a little bit more of a chest unit going on there. Let's turn over. Okay, so now we're building legs. So I'll just pop the chest over to one side. I thought they were feet, and so they are. So yeah, this is 2 times. Okay, so we've got that, and we've got... let's see, and that's going to go in... so that's interesting. So they've actually got their own little Technic pieces built in there, so that's going to slot on there like that. So they've actually got an axle piece built into the foot, which is clever. Okay, so that's two feet. Now we want some shins, which are these. there was that terrifying moment where you're not quite sure if the joint is actually going to accept the piece you're trying to shove into it, because that's another thing about the ball joints, though. They are very, very sturdy. So I've always thought that was a really nice sort of way to attach it. You can see the range of motion you get from it. It's really, really good. So they do make really, really posable figures at the end of the day. Now I want a couple of these, and no, not one of those actually. That's completely wrong. One of those. What's over there? Yeah, definitely some courage required to get those on. It has to be said. And then another one of those. On there. And then it'll knee armoury bits here. Yeah, that wasn't quite just... I was expecting a bigger click for that for some reason. Don't know quite why. Okay, there we go. So, a couple of those on there. And then we are going to take the previously constructed chest and pop the legs on there. And... there. Okay. And there you have a happily standing up half a figure. Now then, I mean, it's not hard, but it is quite satisfying somehow, because you know you're going to get something that's very playable with when you get to the end of the process, I guess. But I can see why some people perhaps maybe wouldn't have liked these as much. I don't know. I mean, it's a very different sort of building experience as compared to what might have been considered, you know, traditional Lego at that point in time. But I believe, as I say, I think it really did save their bacon at that point. Had a good animated series as well, as I recall. In fact, I'm pretty sure you can still watch it on Netflix. I'm sure I've seen it on Netflix before now. Okay. Okay, that's interesting. I'm just checking the instructions for how the arms then attach to the torso. Slightly different mirroring. No, it doesn't go in very far either, actually. It's interesting. Well, I'm pleasantly surprised by the lack of missing pieces, because it would have been a shame if there had been anything amiss. Well, I do find that the antique shops are quite careful, I think, about who they buy from, because, you know, to stay in business they can't really have too many disgruntled people. So I think they do check things as far as they possibly can. So this is how they're supposed to go in. That's really interesting. So the gears are interlinked. So when one arm does that, the other one does that, and that's very clever. I didn't know they did that. That's very clever. So it was a really simple little bit of gearing. So there's another this other gear sort of in the back, which I put in very early on, and the two side gears are interlinking with that. So when one goes up, the other one goes back, and so on and so forth. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I like that. That's a nice little piece of mechanics there for it. Okay, so we're into now that's interesting. How see, so yeah, so these are just clipping on, because again they've got sorry, before I put that on, you can see there they've just got a little axle piece there. You can just about see with the focus. So they just slots on either side there. I'm kind of regretting not having had these back in the day now, because I would quite like these. I mean, completely out of scale with any semblance of minifigures, of course. Completely different sort of ball game, this. Now then, Oh, I see. That's his. Ah, okay. I can see it now. That's the head. But the masks, I believe, are quite important, and I haven't got to the mask element yet. Now. Oh, this is. Oh no, it isn't missing. No, it isn't missing. It's see-through. Okay. So I've got this see-through piece here, which I thought I was missing a piece, but I'm not. It's just going to slide straight into the top of his head like that to give him his blue eyes. And then I need a little joint piece just to lock it into place, like so. So now it can't pop out the back. That's very, very cleverly done. You see, I mean, it is interesting though, because this is all very, very moulded. You know, that's a lot of features through solid pieces, which wasn't really what Lego did originally. You know, everything was normally off the back of being sort of built up from, you know, the standard pieces, whereas now this is a bit of a shift. Now my next question is, how is he supposed to attach? Did I miss it? Ooh, did I miss a step? Controversially, I may have missed a step, although I don't think I have. Now see, I've done the classic thing, which, you know, as you will know if you're a Lego experienced individual. As I've turned the page, I've not noticed that that neck piece has been added with the page turn, and because they're not listing the pieces you need, I hadn't noticed that had arrived there. So I'm not in fact missing a piece, it's just that I hadn't noticed that it was on there. So that will click onto, as it is off from the way, a piece that I put on ages ago. Now I have a neck on which to fix my head. And there he is. Marvellous. So that's most of him. Haven't quite got to the last of it yet. There's still a surprisingly thick booklet left, actually. So let's have a look. That's rather curious. So his sort of helmet is huge. Is that what he's supposed to look like on the front? It is actually, isn't it? Because he's got quite a featureless face when he's actually got his full helmet on. Actually, looking at this on the camera is actually a better view than I can get when I'm looking at him side on. So actually, it does look more like a face from a distance, more like a natural sort of mask. And so he's got these big old subtle weapons, or axes, or whatever they're intended to be, and a few technic pins in there, 2 times. And then they're just going to slot on there in lieu of hands. Now, hang on. No, now I'm confused. You can also manipulate his arms from the back as well using that little cog. That's cool. Oh, it's very cool. It's a clever little gimmick. Now it seems that you can also wear these as shoes, because there's one image. I'll show you. So in this image on the left, he's got these axes in his hands, but then he's got them on his feet as sort of snowshoes. So I'll put them. I'll show you the snowshoes configuration as well, I guess. And it's a clever use of the Technic axles, because they are very useful when it comes to just sort of pinning stuff on. So that's him with his sort of snowshoes on him. They're actually a bit wonky. They seem to make it a bit wonky. He's got to lean forward a little bit to balance correctly with those on, but they do kind of work. I think I put those in the right place. Yeah. See, that's another interesting little gimmick. So when you've got them in that configuration, you can take his arms off, sort of kneeling down, and then apparently he'll pop back into his original container for safekeeping. Okay, that's clever. That's clever. So I see. Now you see again. You see, this is my complete ignorance of how these sets worked. But clearly, you can get, if you have several of the sets, you can then combine them to form bigger beasties. For which this set, well, presumably all of the sets had the secondary instructions for creating larger beasts out of the pieces that you got through these various sets. That's very clever. That's really clever. Because I mean, obviously, the modern day equivalent of this, I suppose, would be one of the 3-in-1 creator sets, whereby you can create more than one model from a given set of pieces. But of course, if you want to have them simultaneously, you've got to buy multiple packs. Whereas with this, you have to buy multiple packs to get one extra model, in effect. But you end up with 4 models, I suppose, as a potential. But you chew up 3 of your models doing that. You can see here the other ones. So these are the Toas there. And I think they all came from different parts of the island. So I think they've all got slightly different themes to them. Yeah, here's the island. You can see there the use of the various sort of graphic style that were then put into the CGI cartoon of them as well. So Garmetru, Tarmetru, Pometru, Onumetru, Kometru, Lumetru, apparently. And the island as a whole is called Metru Nui. So that's that. And the Matora now. So I'm sure some. So I think these are the guys before they put the masks on, are they? So they're before they become Toas, they're Matorans, I believe. I could be wrong. But I think that they are the sort of what the civilians look like before they kind of get their upgrades. And interestingly, it looks like the sort of the shooter mechanism for them was actually a separate set. Looks like it was like an accessory you could buy. And it looks like the lids of the sets can click together as well. Presumably, if you want to then carry them, do you think you could fit a whole figure in there? I don't know. It doesn't really seem to be saying, but maybe you could. Oh yes, so there's there's advertising on the back for the movie and the game. Well, it is really interesting. I mean, that's been really interesting to do. I mean, obviously it's a relatively short. It's a relatively straightforward set to put together. But not having had any experience of them in the past, I can see why they were quite popular. Because if they were just if they weren't ridiculously expensive, they were a lot of fun because you could play with your other action figures with them, very, very easily. And that's, they've got these nice little touches like that. So you can kind of run with them and stuff just by using that on the wheel on the back of them. So yeah, I mean, I completely see why they were really interesting. And, just the sheer scope, the sort of the variety of the pieces was completely different to normal Lego. So in terms of competing with other toys of its era, that was much more on the money. So so that's my first ever Bionicle set completed. It's that's I say, knowing absolutely nothing, coming to it completely cold, I'm actually sort of quite impressed by that, because I do think that it's a very sophisticated design that gives you a really good toy, and there's also there's clearly a lot of playability there, but it's still Lego Technic at the end of the day. That's what's driving the functionality underneath it. So it's a very sort of clever themed in, and the nice thing about it is as well, it's an original IP. So I don't know if it completely predates Lego doing Star Wars and that sort of thing, but at least it was Lego actually venturing out on its own to do its own thing and building its own IP, which you could then use later. It also means it's a cheaper set than would otherwise be the case, because they don't have to license it from a third party, which is a win for everybody, really. So yeah, that's Bionicle then. So I'm quite impressed by that. If I'm back Matlock way again, I might have to try and pick up a few more examples of it and see if I can get enough together to make one of the bigger beasties and have a look at one of them. Reminds me of Zoid slightly, actually, the bigger beasties, but that's a story for another day, as they say. The other thing I wanted to show you, actually, while I think about it before I hit stop, is this. And of course, he can't even fit on the camera because he's huge, but this is, if I bring him down a little bit lower there, you can see that's Chewbacca. And I would say that, I'm just going to lay them next to each other, because Chewbacca, I think, has a lot of similarity with this Bionicle figure, because they are both effectively the same principle. They are a Technic skeleton on which have been put. You can see here, looking at him on the back, he's really a sort of stretched out version of the principles that apply to the Bionicle set that I've just made. So you can see, his feet are one piece there, and all his legs are just sort of plates put onto the sort of underlying endoskeleton, which is Technic long sort of Technic struts. So in fact, he's a much more recent, he's from my son's collection, so he's a much more recent model, but he's still harking back to the Bionicle days in terms of how they've chosen to put him together. So you can see that the basic principles are still intact even in the modern versions. It's really no difference, and if you put more armour onto the Bionicle, you'd end up with a Chewbacca at the end of the day. So yeah, lots of play potential there. So on that bombshell, I shall leave you. Hope you enjoyed it. Do subscribe and all that good stuff, and I will see you again. Cheers.